And in my opinion, I believe everything happens for a reason. So I believe when you are exposed to certain things at certain times in your life, there's a reason for that. I don't particularly know why. Maybe you weren't ready for it, but I do know that it's never too late to change the trajectory of what you want to do.
Taking a minute to be myself, don't need no help. We keep on rising.
Okay, everyone, this is Connie Davis. We are back with another episode of You Know It, my favorite topic, commerce. And here on Unlocking Commerce in Business, I'm your hostess. And we have a different conversation that we're going to have a little bit today that I'm really kind of looking forward to. It's different, it's fresh, and we're going to be talking about a term not many of you may have heard called the Silver Tsunami. And it not being just a demographic event, we're going to actually dive into this a little bit differently than we normally do, because today's guest knows all about the wave of this silver tsunami that we're talking about that's coming, and from a little different perspective. So I want to welcome to the show Mark Robles. He's out of Boca Raton, guys, right down in South Florida. And I'm really excited because he's actually my first college student and graduate getting ready to graduate out of Florida Atlantic University. And I love talking with young people about commerce. They are inheriting the world as it is today. But Mark, you're also going to be helping to change and shape the future of tomorrow in business. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Connie. I really appreciate it, and I'm actually pretty excited to be on this. So I'm really happy that you could have me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into the conversation because I've had a lot of really esteemed business owners and entrepreneurs on the show, companies, large companies that, have scale, influencers and people that provide service to business owners, and then community leaders like nonprofits that are seeing things that kind of don't go so well, out in the community for people that are trying to start a business. And it's a lot of work. So, but before we kind of go into this silver tsunami, and I'm going to say that several times, take me back a little bit through your origin story. And when did you first realize like this was a thing that you wanted to do, that you wanted to kind of learn more about? And what was it that moment happened that you kind of said, I'm going to kind of dive into this, especially right after, you're getting ready to graduate college. So what does that look like?
Gotcha. So it's actually pretty funny. I came into college as a multimedia journalism major.
Okay.
I had no idea that I was ever going to be in the finance or economics related field, but I could have seen if I would have read between the lines. Every single paper that I wrote about from like high school all the way to college, it was always an economics or finance based paper.
Okay.
So that was one little thing that I didn't realize. But when I finally discovered that I was going to enter this kind of space, it was about, I would say 9 months ago where I finally came to terms with the fact that, I didn't want to pursue journalism. I wasn't super into the political journalism. I was losing the little bit of passion I had for sports broadcasting. And I was forced to kind of ask myself, like, man, what do I want to do? I mean, the last 3.5 years of college, I've been doing journalism, and now I don't want to follow with that anymore. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try and find a good internship, find something that I like, and then go from there. And
Okay.
my roommate, who just so happens to, be the CEO of Cynerge's son, he invited me to go to one of the Session Zeros. I'm not too sure if people are familiar with Session Zero or Alonzo Williams, but I'm sure they'll know one day. But I went to one of those Session Zeros and I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I have no idea what's going on because I've never heard any of this jargon or anything have to do with this, but I'm really interested. And during Alonzo's presentation, I was sitting with Trey and Aisha, who are two of the interns with Cynerge. I'm not sure if Aisha's with us anymore, but Trey is. And he looks over at us and he was like, my interns are going to be, helping us with this stuff. And he starts pointing at me. I'm like, I've never even met you before. I don't know why you're including me, but I'm really interested. So I walked up to him after and I was like, hey, like, can I be a part of this? And he was like, if you want to. So it was a fantastic opportunity, and that was what began my journey and learning about the Silver Tsunami. So it kind of went from 0 to 100 very fast. I was forced to learn a completely new field, and my trajectory of work completely changed.
Okay. Well, so you had this hidden passion that you kind of like revealed the surface of as you were going through journalism. And that tells me, though, that you're going to be really good at telling a story or at least digging into the details of a story, however you go forward. So that's super impressive, Mark. And, congratulations on just being willing to immerse in something new. So, and you're so young. So you get to choose this path that I would say some people your age haven't even heard of yet. And so have you talked to your family? Like, what do you think and your friends say? And, how do you kind of see yourself kind of stepping out after college?
Gotcha. Well, in the times that I have spoke to my family and my friends, they usually aren't familiar with what I'm doing. And stepping into this definitely was a lot different because, like I said before, I was expecting to do something in the journalism field. But now that I'm in this completely new space and a new game, stepping into it was a little bit nerve wracking because I'm like, dude, I don't know what's going on. But thankfully, Google and ChatGPT are things and YouTube are things. So I didn't have to worry too much about the learning aspect and the research aspect. I just had to, take the time and just like you said, immerse myself in it because I am young and I do have the time to search for these things. So I just try to take full opportunity of that.
Okay, so here we go, guys. We're going to dive into this silver tsunami. So, if you haven't heard this phrase, I'm going to actually invite Mark to tell us in his own words from a young college graduate about ready to graduate. And congratulations on that in advance, Mark. It's a
Thank you.
huge accomplishment for you to finish that. I'm sure it's a huge milestone for you. But let's talk about this silver tsunami for people who have never heard that phrase. So I want you to paint the picture for us in your own words. And what is happening out there in this entrepreneurial world that would make you want to shift from journalism to this role with Cynerge Capital? So why does it matter to someone listening to this audience or listening to this podcast right now in my audience?
Of course, I love to explain this. It's really interesting. So it's actually a little more simple than it might sound. The silver tsunami, they use the term tsunami because there's a large transfer of wealth. There's going to be about a $10 trillion wealth transfer in about the next 10 to 15 years, I believe. And that is because the baby boomers are officially ready to retire. They are also getting sick. They're ready to stop working. As they get older, these things of life start to come up, and even though they've almost become one with their businesses, and that kind of becomes an extension of yourself, there is a time where they get ready to part with that extension of themselves, and that time is now. So it is kind of like a once in a generation opportunity. We won't see another opportunity like this until the next generation of people retire. So that was one of the most interesting things for me to see because it's a bunch of opportunity. And of course, these business owners, they have family and people they would want to inherit the business, but their family doesn't always want to take over their company. So there is a lot of empty shoes to fill. And after building these companies for all those years, of course they wanted to run it and they loved it, but at some point you have to have your exit plan in mind. So that was a big selling point for me was the opportunity and the fact that really anybody, if they take the time and the effort to learn and put themselves in the right rooms, they can be a part of it.
Hmm. Okay, so these are real businesses. These are established businesses. These are people that we would consider experts in industries out in the community that are ready to kind of transfer their business and keep that business running because they've worked so many years to kind of build it, scale it, grow it, but then they're ready to kind of hand it over. So let's think about the actual impact at a human level when a business that's been in a community like we know, there's so many different small businesses. They are the backbone of the US, right? And America and probably all over the world. But when nobody steps up to kind of take that ownership for them, what do you see as risk for that community?
Well, one thing that I would see as risk for local communities is just like that entrepreneurial drive and also that little touch to certain communities. Because I know that anyone that's from maybe a small town or a big town, you have those holes in the wall that you're familiar with and those places that kind of feel like home and those random places. And the next thing you know, you come back after being gone for a while and they're gone. It's like, oh my gosh, like where did that go? I think it brings a culture to the places you're from. And then, like also you said, those small businesses, they have a nice role in the economy, right? These small businesses play a huge role. There's so many of them. And that's why, the Small Business Administration, they're willing to fund things like that. So I think from a terms of a culture aspect, it would be sad to see a lot of those things go. And then in terms of a business aspect, it's like you said, I mean, these small businesses, they're extremely necessary to help the economy flourish.
So, what kind of businesses are we talking about? Like, where is Synergy going to be focused? Where is your vision in South Florida? I mean, we know Florida's got a lot of retirees, but we have a lot of really cool cultural communities that are small in rural areas that the community really kind of relies on. So, what is kind of like, um, what's keeping people from kind of seeing this as an opportunity? Or is it once you start talking about it, they go, "Oh, didn't even think about that." Like, what's that been for you?
So far, I've seen a lot of people not even really considering the idea. Most of the conversations I have, at first when you bring up the idea of acquiring a business,
Uh-huh.
and the five businesses or the five business verticals that we focus on are usually professional services. So maybe something like a bookkeeping or an insurance company. And then you've got professional service, I'm sorry, not professional service, home services. So
Mhm.
that would be plumbing, HVAC, the not so sexy business that is extremely necessary, healthcare, childcare and education, and then we also have auto services, right? So
Mhm.
those are the five main companies or verticals we look at because they can be recession resistant and they're relatively necessary. So in
Yeah.
terms of the conversations I have with people about those businesses, they have no idea that they can go about funding outside of their own pockets, right?
Yeah.
They don't really know how the SBA works. They're not really familiar with capital stacking and they don't even really consider the idea. They automatically go to, I have to start it up myself.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is you are out in the community as an intern saying, guys, we need to have this conversation. You're probably looking around your community where you grew up or where you live and have gone to school, seeing these same kind of businesses. But what I'm hearing you do is you're getting involved in helping people acquire businesses, but I want to go deeper than that transaction part of acquiring the business. When someone successfully kind of says, "Hey, Synergy Capital, I want to learn more," because you mentioned this, session zeros. Tell us, what does that look like in that like milestone? Like when what is Synergy doing to help us really kind of get people involved in this silver tsunami?
Yeah. So what Synergy's doing is they are providing an infrastructure and creating a pathway that not too many people are familiar with yet.
Okay.
So in order to acquire these businesses, right, you can't just, like I said, just go up and do it without the money. And that's the main point that people don't buy a business. So with Synergy Capital, one of the things we do is in the name, we help raise the capital. We also help with signing off on the SBA loan, depending on the team you put together. That's a whole nother story on the team you're building. But Synergy's job is to create, and which we already have, is a repeatable model that people can come to us and say, hey, I am interested in buying a business, but I would love to have a team with me, right? So Synergy Capital is going to help you with the capital side and going through the acquisition. And then Synergy Group, which is the main head, that is a board of trusted advisors. That is going to be where all of your knowledge comes from. That is going to be how we get your board of directors in place so that you don't go and make a stupid decision and we're like, hey, wait, like, you know, we've done this before. I know it seems great, but that's why we're here.
Yeah,
So we help you through the whole acquisition process
I
from
see.
the deal sourcing to raising the capital to dealing with the loan to off market deals, on market deals, post acquisition success, and your exit plan. It's
Yeah.
a whole strategy. We're not just trying to get you in ownership and then leave you alone. We want to try and create something generational.
And I really like this because I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for about 6 years now. And, you can go the solopreneur path and build from scratch. You can go the founder's path and go through the VC gauntlet, which, anybody that's a nonprofit founder, if you're listening, a nonprofit is very similar to a founder. You're still starting something up from scratch. You've got an idea, you want to solve a problem and you still have to go out and raise that capital. So it's either donations or it's, funding for your business and you're doing it alone. So Mark, what I love that you're talking about is you're building a council which comes along anyways. We're just putting it at the beginning it sounds like with people with experience. And so tell me about Alonzo. Tell me about his vision behind Synergy and how that really drew you in because I know he's pretty cool guy from when I met him and I love that he's involving young people in the stabilization of their communities that they're growing up in.
Oh, yeah. So Alonzo's got quite the story, and I will do my best to serve it justice. But to my knowledge, Alonzo started, um, let's go back to his college career. So going into college, his mom initially was like, "Hey, you should be a major in computer sciences." And he was like, "No, I don't want to do that." And I believe he ended up majoring in economics,
Mm.
right? And once he graduates college, you guess where he ends up in IT. So it's like, he went to college for economics. His mom said do computer sciences. He ends up in computer sciences anyways, right? So he ends up being in IT for a while, at least over 10 years. And he kind of climbs that corporate America ladder and he starts learning how to really take it over and do it himself. And I'm not sure how he ended up in this position. I'm not sure if it was a startup or if he had a team, but he ends up being the president of Xerion 360, which is a software as a service company. From there, he ends up exiting. And then we're a bit closer to today. I believe that's going to have us around 2020, 2021. I'm kind of streamlining this because I don't fully know the depths of his story. So I hope one day he can get on here and talk
Can't
about
have him. Yep, we're gonna get Alonzo on the show. But yeah, keep going though, because what I want to hear is these impression points where someone with the experience and just work experience and being in the community of the business deals has made such an impression on you.
Uh-huh. So I'll skip over the part where I was just at and I'll get to the present day. So when I went to that session 0 that I'm talking about, that is just kind of an informational day for people to learn about Cynerge Capital.
Hmm.
And that was where I first learned about Synergy and got to meet Alonzo. And the impression he gave me was that, first of all, he's a great storyteller. And he is really good at painting the picture. And he will take the long route to enter something, but it ends up being extremely efficient. So I've learned that. But just his business savvy mind with everything he's been through, it's very convincing in a good way. Like when he was explaining everything, even though I didn't really know what was going on at first, it became really easy to learn
Mm.
because you first have to decide for yourself if you want to be a part of it. But the way Alonzo was able to kind of captivate my mind, like, oh my gosh, like, this is actually a possibility. He makes these difficult things seem a lot more simple than they really are. But it's just because of all his experience. So that was one of the first things that I realized from him. I was like, oh my gosh, like, even though I haven't done these things, he's breaking them down in bite-sized pieces so that I can accomplish them through different steps. So that was my first ever experience with Alonzo.
I like that because I hear that a lot so I do a lot of work with vulnerable populations and I consider, people that are, at a point where have had some really difficult times, but they're like, I got to start something of my own. Or, even like a student like yourself where you don't know what you don't know and you need some mentorship and you need someone to kind of like take you through the process because there's so much information online. There's YouTube channels and there's documents and there's websites and there's so much that there's even AI that'll go out and get there. But how do you actually have a human to guide you? And what I'm hearing from you, Mark, is if it's fair, is you kind of tapped into the heart of Alonzo as a mentor and as a teacher.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when he was willing to bring me on board with Synergy, right? He, like I was saying, is a seasoned businessman. He knows what he's doing. He could probably go out easily and find a team of people who are more qualified than me. But the fact that he was willing to teach me and give me his phone number so I can ask him questions, and he also provides us with plenty of documents. So, like, he was like, "Hey guys, by the way, I just thought of this. Make sure you go check this out." Like, he always puts things in front of me to learn from. So I think it's completely fair to say that in a way, he has been like an indirect mentor and a direct teacher because he's teaching me how to play in this game and how to do it the right way.
Yeah. Well, and that's the pattern that I see out in communities, right? It's like there's a gap. They're trying to get from point A to point Z. Everybody has a dream. They want to, they want to have a life that they can love living and have all of the things and the experiences that they dream of when they're little kids or teenagers and getting exposed to the outside world of, building something and turning that capital and their value exchange into something material. And we know you guys get exposed to that in school, right? And did you have any of these kinds of real world experiences inside of college? Did you get exposed at this type of level, or what did that look like? And why is this so different?
Oh no, I did not get exposed to anything like this in college.
Mm,
So I do think that also depends on where you're placing yourself at, right? I wouldn't say that I took full advantage of my school clubs. I
yeah.
wouldn't say that I took full advantage of the fraternal opportunities, although I was in a fraternity. I wouldn't say I took full advantage of those opportunities. But in terms of the basic learning, just basic classes and, the basic college experience, I wasn't exposed to it too much. So
Mm,
it was like a very large paradigm shift for me when I started to realize how real the real world is and how fast it was closing in on me.
mm. Yeah, that's a very real thing. And we've got, books out there, like even the anxious generation is a community that, the teachers are kind of sounding the alarm and saying, guys, our students are not prepared for what the real business world looks like. And is I love seeing this, this acceleration of real world kind of economic development related programs. There's just not enough of them to meet all of the students, and it sounds like there's this other side that Alonso's really tapped into where there's business owners that are trying to hand the keys off and there's not enough people, maybe not just their family, because their family goes in a different direction, for these kind of just recession proof businesses that are staples in the community. So, is that kind of your goal? Like, what's your mission now that you're kind of stepped into this community with Alonso and the team? Where do you want to take it?
Well, first and foremost, my main mission is just to keep informing myself because it's hard to say where I personally want to go, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I would love to be in that position of being an advisor one day or possibly being a business owner or being more on the private equity analyst stuff, looking more into the deal sourcing and deal flow. So I haven't fully been able to answer that question for myself.
And that's fair.
But but I do know that the more I inform myself and the more I learn what I'm actually interested in, it is easier to start deducting, okay, I don't know for sure if I want to do that, but I know I definitely don't like that side of it. So I'm a big believer in being passionate and enjoying what you do. My dad always told me growing up, if you don't love it, it's going to be really hard to live it. And he loves what he does. He owns a car lot and he's done it his whole life. So it's really hard for me to look at something and be like, if I don't love that, how can I see myself doing it forever?
Yeah,
But in terms of this space in general, I do like where I'm at and I'm excited to see where I end up at.
I think that is a very just smart, pragmatic approach to what the next few years ahead of you look like is. And I hear you saying, I'm going to immerse, I'm going to kind of explore, see what I can learn and pick up for yourself. And those are all really great skills to kind of just build, that expertise around you and you just keep doing it. So that's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about this the audience is listening. Most of my listeners are going to be in an entrepreneurial type of mindset. We tend to focus on that, but we tend to talk about some of the really hard things. And, if there's someone that's kind of listening, and let's say, they may not have it all together. They may just be kind of curious or really passionate about doing something and building something for themselves. It could be a 28-year-old listening right now. It could be a 45-year-old that feels like maybe they missed their window. But they're thinking, maybe there's something for me. What's the first honest thing that you say when you run into somebody like that out in the community as you're networking?
Well, the first thing I always say is that I don't think that you've missed an opportunity inherently. It's more so that you just haven't fully been aware of it yet, right? And in my opinion, I believe everything happens for a reason. So I believe when you are exposed to certain things at certain times in your life, there's a reason for that. I don't particularly know why. Maybe you weren't ready for it, but I do know that it's never too late to change the trajectory of what you want to do,
Mm.
but you do have to be all in, right? I mean, it's not a walk in the park buying a business. It's a completely different game. I'm still learning a whole bunch about it, but I don't think you've ever missed your opportunity. I don't agree with that. I think you always have the opportunity to kind of adjust your trajectory of your life if you're willing to take on some of those bumps that come along with it.
Those are wise words, Mark, for someone your age. So I think you just spoke very, very eloquently of like what life ahead of you looks like and how you can pivot when you need to pivot. So
Yeah.
that's super impressive for anybody that's listening. I don't know about you, but I don't hear that type of an answer from someone as young as Mark very often. So that's great to hear. What is commerce mean to you? It's something that I ask every guest that comes on the show. What does commerce mean to you, Mark?
Well, the first thing that I think of when I think of commerce is the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh,
But when
okay.
I think of what commerce actually means to me, I don't know the definition by term, but it means to me, I think of money flowing, I think of abundance, and I start to think of business usually if I'm thinking of commerce.
Okay. And I asked that question and I picked this question, this word. I use this word a lot because the way that we started, if you think about the original, forms of business, business was about trading. You were trading something. I needed something, and that merchant or business had something that I needed. And so, in the days of, commodity type trading in a marketplace, in a physical marketplace, it was, about like cows for vegetables or, meat for grain. Things like that was an exchange of something that somebody else had of value. So, commerce technically means the full exchange of human value and
Mm.
or value of goods and services that are being exchanged. So Chamber of Commerce is a great example because it was a model that was created to bring businesses together in a community to be able to exchange and network and to build a network of growing your business. So the value that I hear you kind of developing, you've got a value you've learned through, journalism. How do you look at pulling that value together into a complete package for you as you step into this kind of new role for yourself?
Ultimately, I have had to think about this before. When I try to figure out how I am gonna combine it all with a journalism background and
Mhm.
entering into a financial space, um, like I said before, the thing was just learning and being a sponge
Mm,
because it's really hard, in my opinion, to not want to keep learning, especially when you haven't learned so many things.
mm,
And I think that just constantly being okay with being wrong is also big for me because, I mean, like I said, there's always going to be something new going on with AI advances and technology and all kinds of things coming out. I think that when I combine journalism into this new space, I just have to be okay with change. And I also have to take time to inform myself.
okay. Okay. I think that that's where you build depth. So what I hear is I'm going to, soak things up and experience different environments so that I can have a broader perspective in order to put all the facts together. That's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing. Yeah. So, so far you've been out in the community, talking to different people. And what is let's talk about, in a way that we unlock commerce and you're starting to exchange some information of value to them. And are they receiving it? Or are they having misperceptions that you're finding yourself repeating and explaining over and over again?
So, in terms of receptiveness, I think they're understanding the concept. I just don't think that the majority of people are fully comfortable taking the jump because they're not too familiar with it themselves.
Hmm.
And I have found that met entrepreneurs and business owners that are very interested in going through with an acquisition at first when you kind of speak about it.
Hmm.
But I just think ultimately the lack of knowledge around certain things can create a little bit of worry for people because it can be kind of hard to trust people that you just met, right? Especially when I'm walking up to you saying, "Hey, you can buy a business." And
Right.
you're like, what does this guy know? Like, I actually own a business, this, that, and I think the ultimate thing to build that receptiveness is for the people that do come on board to continually produce results, in which
Mm-hmm.
we are in the midst of producing results. It's just going to be a matter of time before people start seeing, oh, wow, like a lot of people are going through with this.
So, are you thinking that if you were to sit down with some of the community leaders, so let's say a mayor or the head of your chamber of commerce, what would you say? How would you talk to them about this model and fueling this model in their community?
I think the biggest thing that I would stress is awareness because people like mayors and chambers of commerce, they have that network and abundance of people they can reach out to actually make this something that people know about. And I think I would try and leverage it in that position where it's like, hey, people don't know about this. And people have worked really hard all their lives to build these businesses. And now there's no hands for them to fall into. And these are important businesses. These are the auto shop next door that you can get everything fixed out when you break down. These are your healthcare services. These are your AC and plumbing. These are very important businesses, right? So
Right.
instead of having to make people start them back up from the ground up again, let's find a way to make people aware of this so that we can just keep it going. It doesn't have to end with the person that founded it, but we can continue and build upon it.
I see. And you're almost, I mean, it sounds pretty fail proof. It sounds like, you got a village of people that you're not just leaving the founder on their own. So I think we've highlighted a lot of areas today. Is there something that you want to say or talk about that I didn't ask you, Mark? I mean, as far as like really how you kind of talk about this in the community on your own?
Something that I personally want to talk about because it came up recently with a friend of mine is that there's no such thing as being underqualified for this space.
Mm,
And the reason I say that is because I had a buddy of mine who was really interested in getting into the space and, possibly going through an acquisition. And when me and him were talking with Alonzo, the founder of Synergy, he was saying at the end of it, hey, like, I love this opportunity and I would love to be a part of it. I just don't think I'm qualified. The whole point of Synergy is to bridge that gap for those who think they are underqualified. I don't believe you can ever be underqualified. I believe you can be undermotivated. I believe you can be underdriven. I believe you can be inconsistent.
mm.
But if you have those three marks down and you're like, man, I just don't think I have the qualifications, believe me, you might not need them right away because the team with Synergy, we will help you build those things. That's why we have the advisors and the board of directors and people who have been in business and have owned businesses and have sold businesses to help you get to that point that you thought you could never be at. So I think being underqualified is a very large misconception.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you actually brought that up because, again, going back to some of these vulnerable communities, and there's this shadow of the storm, like the storm cloud almost that follows them around about doubt or lack of competency or just lack of visibility for them, and they kind of get squeezed out and live on the outskirts, of their community, getting the type of work that they could do. But sometimes they're the most resilient people that are in communities because they've already been through so much adversity. So if you can get through that and you can still be out there like trying to hustle, why wouldn't we help them do that in a better, more advantageous way that's a win-win for every community?
I agree.
Yeah. Well, this has been super fascinating, Mark. Do you have any other closing thoughts? When is your college graduation?
So my college graduation is in August, and I will no longer be able to call myself a student. So that's a weird thing in my brain. I'm not used to that yet,
Yeah.
but I am excited to no longer have homework. So pros and
Oh,
cons.
yeah, the good old-fashioned homework. Well, that's amazing. Well, you have a different kind of homework because you'll be researching deals and all kinds of things. So I wish you great success in your next chapter here. And thank you for coming on the show to talk with us about the work you're doing at Synergy.
Of course. Thank you, Connie. It was really fun. I'm glad I got to share.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for everyone. If you're tuning in, thanks for following us along through this episode so far and all of the episodes that we have been here in season 2. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow and share this episode. And let's start talking about entrepreneurship through acquisition. I think it's a new concept. If you hadn't heard about the Silver Tsunami, consider yourself informed. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Unlocking Commerce and Business. If this conversation resonated, here's what you can do. Subscribe for weekly conversations with survivors, innovators, and changemakers, building regenerative alternatives to extractive commerce. Share this episode with collaborators, partners, funders, and changemakers in your network. The people ready for restorative commerce need to hear these voices. Drop a comment below. Tell us what patterns you're recognizing or what solutions you're building. We read every one. Commerce is everywhere, and healing extraction patterns inside our communities creates regenerative commerce outside. Like a lighthouse, we're here, exploring and cutting through fog, pointing toward what works. Welcome to the era of restorative commerce. Until next time, explore courageously, build sovereignly. You are the source and store of value. This is Connie Davis signing off. Thank you for being here.